The Daily Mirror is absolutely determined to suggest that Harry and his chances of returning to the United Kingdom hinge completely on managing to win over King Charles and Queen Camilla, because he knows that Prince William will end up banishing him. But of course, what's so troubling amongst all of this is that Harry's last hope actually hinges on a future King William. Now, two absolute veteran royal authors, Robert Jobson and Tom Bower, came together over the weekend. And it was a fascinating discussion to see these big beasts in royal reporting try and cut through whether there actually is truth in the mainstream media reporting of Harry's return. So first up, Tom Bower made it clear that Prince Harry is desperate to return. Watch.
Harry is desperate to get back one way or another. Meghan couldn't care two hoots.
Amen. She's selling her
in
booze.
California. She doesn't want to come back here. Yeah. She's got what she needed. She's got a title. The C-rated actress is now a global star. She's got everything and money. Yeah. So for her, and that's what's so interesting, is the division.
Yes.
And of course, people always say, well, can the marriage last? I think Harry is so devoted to his children.
Yeah.
That the thought of not having,
and he wouldn't see them really. That's
exactly.
The point.
No, there's no way she would allow them.
So he is now. He's between a rock and a hard place. That's his fate.
Does it not annoy you though? Because you're absolutely right. She couldn't care less if she came back here. But doesn't it annoy you that she's trying to sell tea and scones and
she's got inevitable.
Her royal crest? I mean, isn't there a contradiction there?
She'll look at anything there that will make the money. I mean, she's simply, she's got a brass neck, as we'd say. She really doesn't bother. She can see this way. She's probably looked at the king selling selling the Dutch originals for charity and all that sort of stuff, and thought, well, and it's almost, you look at the actual the logos and everything, it's almost like the stuff from the Dutch originals. No, she doesn't. She's on her own route.
Lauren Lunn Farrow has been shaping mainstream media narratives as one of the country's top entertainment PRs for the past 20 years, but she is now a media critic and strategist, posting on Instagram under Lauren Lunn Farrow, and it is brilliant to have her with us today. So do you agree with Tom Bower, Lauren, that there does seem to be a very clear strategic split when it comes to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? So Markle, even though, as you have in the past pointed out, even though her business is hardly flying, and we'll come to that very shortly, at the end of the day, she still sees her path to becoming a billionaire in Hollywood. Whereas for Harry, he's got nothing to do. Nothing has worked. He is now completely at a loose end, hence this desperation to sort of return to what he's always known, and actually, deep down, what he really loves, which is being the royal prince.
Yeah, I think he probably was on a high when he was able to talk up, his truth and everything after leaving the royal family, do his book, do the show. But now he's thought, well, what else is there? So he's got his Invictus Games. But Meghan, on the other hand, she just wants to try everything. Biscuits one week, edible flowers the next, shortbread, tea, wine. She's like a loose cannon.
But as a PR, you must be looking at this being like, why is she not listening to anyone? Like, there's no strategy behind what she's doing.
You're right, there is no strategy, because I was looking into everything they've done and I thought, who are you trying to appeal to? We have children in this country who are going to breakfast clubs. We have parents who are working 3-4 jobs to pay the bills. And the same is going on in America.
Yeah.
And you are selling us. This is not a time to be selling a very expensive rosé, to be selling a show that is skipping through your kitchen, everything's so neat, and these organic ingredients. This is so out of touch with reality. And I think this just really shows you how toxic Los Angeles is. And I would also like to say that with her jams, she said that she thought for such a long time, how can I scale up these jams? All my friends love these jams. Have you ever heard Meghan Markle talk about her love of jam? I haven't.
No, it's bullshit. It's a scam jam.
Bullshit.
The whole thing is a scam jam. And by the way, we're not even meant to call it jam. It's actually a spread. And I did want to move on to that now, actually, Lauren, because I know you have lots of doubts about exactly what Meghan is saying in regards to her business, right? Like, is she actually telling the truth? Does she really have the resource? And what's very interesting is Tom Bower says absolutely not. He claims that she does not have the resources, even if she did want to launch these products properly. So I'll get your reaction after we see what he has to say.
As resources. You see, to actually launch a brand with all these different products, you need a huge amount of money. You need tens of millions of dollars. And what we're seeing is that she can't find a financial backer. So I think what's happened is that she's launched these products in the hope that somebody will come along and say, there's money in this, let's support Meghan and her As Ever brand.
Oh, so hence the sold out.
Well, that's also distribution
failure. Is that what you think?
No, it's not distribution failure. She hasn't got the money to make it in the first place.
Yeah.
You see, she's made 50 jars of jam.
Yes.
Well, they're sold out. Yeah. They're sold out because she gave them away.
Right.
But the real problem is, if you want to make 50,000 jars, you need to have millions of dollars. She hasn't got the money for it. And what's interesting is that there isn't a CEO, there's no chief executive of the As Ever brand to actually develop her products. So there she is with all these ideas, but in the end, it all boils down to herself as the brand. So there's Gwyneth Paltrow and Martha Stewart and the Kardashians, but who is Meghan? And that is the problem. And therefore, who is the brand? So what we're really seeing is a sort of forlorn, ridiculous woman trying terribly, terribly hard. But you must give her credit for one thing. You never see her ever forlorn. You never visibly see the defeated Meghan.
Right.
And that's what's so interesting about her. I have great admiration for her strength. The strength of purpose, it may be misdirected, it is. Yeah. But my God, is she a fighter and survivor.
Now, that's actually quite fascinating because I've never heard Tom Bower say a positive word about Meghan Markle. So I do want to come back to that because I think it was an interesting point. But before we get there, Lauren, is what Tom Bower is saying about actually not having the money, not having the resources to do a proper rollout of this As Ever brand, what you are also hearing?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what he's saying. And I did some research into this wine as well. And it's really interesting. It's not listed on the website of the place that worked with Meghan on it, which I thought was interesting. And it made me think she wants to be seen as being, the curator and, discovering a new rosé. It's not a new rosé. It's likely that she paid to get X amount of bottles, white labeled and crushed, is my opinion. And then she could have sold 5 bottles for all we know. And then you do the go-to PR strategy, sold out. I've done it so many times with clients. Brands were not selling. So you have to fake it till you make it. You say it's sold out, you start PRing that narrative, and all of a sudden people within distribution start to get excited, and it's smoke and mirrors. And she does not have the distribution in place to launch a wine brand. If you look at someone like Kylie Minogue, Kylie has been working on this for years. She is so heavily involved. I know people that work with her. She's an absolute delight and is across everything with her brand. I don't believe that Meghan Markle is an expert in grapes.
No, she's definitely not. And then what I loved was all of the spin, but she tried lots of different versions of this. The problem is she rushes everything, because when she did that interview with Tina Knowles on her own podcast, she made it absolutely clear that it would be a failure if she had to continue with what is described as a scarcity strategy, right? Which is when you put something up for sale and then the products immediately go, which means everyone's just annoyed because they either don't get the product. But then literally within weeks, she's doing exactly the same thing. So yeah, I totally agree that there's huge fundamental issues with the setup of this business. Then can we talk about Harry? Because...
just quickly,
yes,
my
please, come in.
bet on her... I think with her rosé, she will strike a deal with Soho House and get her rosé into every Soho house. That would be the best thing that she could do. And I'll give her that advice for free right now, because otherwise it's going to tank. And we know that the Lady A wine was the rosé she loved at Soho House. So unless they're trying to be clever and getting it into somewhere like there for distribution, I don't see it working, because they don't even ship outside of the US.
No, exactly. And I mean, it would be so embarrassing for her if actually all roads in the end led back to Soho House, which, remember, she spent so many years trying to get away from. But when it comes to Harry, there's now a feeling that he's a one-trick pony and that all he can do is sort of replicate things that he's done in the past, specifically things that have a link to his dead mother. So this is what Jobson and Bauer have to say, and then we'll discuss on the back.
As Tom quite rightly says, are looking a little bit desperate at the moment. I think this Angola walk we've just seen him doing again what he did in 19, you know, that his mother did. It's a bit like a one-trick pony, Harry, and he's reaching out. He's obviously desperate for this reconciliation, really, because of course we know that his father's still he's been treated with chemotherapy, and he's already said publicly he doesn't know how long he's got left. So maybe they want to get discussions going about the all-important things that happen at a time when people are coming to an end, you know. Money, I think.
Well, I think it's more than just money. I think what Harry fears is that when and if his father dies, his brother will banish him from Britain. I think that the hatred amongst William and Kate, rightly so for what Harry has done, and Mr. like ink poison, is absolutely irreversible. And what Harry fears is that once Charles passes on, he won't be let into Britain at all. And that is a major problem for him.
It is a problem, but the reality on that as well, we've also seen, haven't we, the story by Victoria Ward in the Telegraph, where they were talking about, you know, and that upset the palace quite a lot about talking about funeral arrangements and things, and how William and Harry wanted him to be centre of that. Look, it's difficult to know. One thing I agree totally with Tom with is a reconciliation with William is not on the cards whatsoever.
So it's interesting, Lauren, that there you have two of the big beasts of royal reporting both agreeing there's no way William will even consider bringing Harry back into the fold. I like that term, irreversible hatred. And I think they're right, aren't they? And this is one of the reasons why Harry is so desperate to keep on clinging to the memory of Diana, because he's never going to be able to cling to his brother again.
Yeah, and I think as well, while Harry has been trashing William, William has been quietly helping his wife through cancer, helping their father through cancer. They are on such different pages. For someone that claims to be all about family like Harry does, the way he has publicly trashed his family and continues to, you know, it's almost like Harry and Meghan Google Diana's best bits and key dates, and they tap into it. We've got Meghan releasing her wine on the 1st of July, Diana's birthday. We've got Harry, you know, rewalking the same walk that Diana did and recreating those iconic moments, which second time round, they're not iconic.
No, not at all.
It's old news.
And by the way, third time round now. Do you know what I mean? I find it so tacky and so crass. And then what I also find really interesting is that the mainstream media, because they're so desperate to, for some reason, bring Harry into the fold, they're trying to forgive the unforgivable. But what Bauer makes very clear in this interview with Kinsey Schofield for her Unfiltered channel, I should point that out, by the way, because she does brilliant work, is that Harry doesn't feel, and by the way, this matches my reporting too, Harry doesn't feel any guilt, any remorse, and still wants an apology from the royal family. Watch this.
What makes this situation so difficult isn't simply the question of whether Harry wants to return. It's the question of what returning would actually require. The royal family isn't just a personal relationship. It's an institution built heavily around trust, discretion, and continuity. Once private family conflicts become public books, interviews, documentaries, and headlines, rebuilding that trust becomes far more complicated than simply saying sorry. And there's another important dynamic here. Harry's future cannot remain permanently tied to Diana's legacy or his past role as a royal prince. At some point, his own actions and achievements have to define him. That is why William becomes so significant. Charles may represent the possibility of forgiveness, but William represents the future. So the real question isn't whether Harry can get back through the door. It's whether the people inside still believe he can be trusted once he's there. And that may be the one barrier no headline can remove.
Stood with his family what he was going to say.
He's sold out. This is
the worst thing. He was disloyal. But I think what we've got to look at the present moment is, I don't think he feels in any way guilty. I don't think Harry feels any remorse. And I think that is the key thing in all this reconciliation. He still thinks that he's owed an apology from Charles and from William for the way they've treated not only him but also Meghan. And he doesn't want to realise that it's his behaviour, his writing for money, being so unbelievably disloyal, that has caused and aggravated the problem.
Well, that won't be coming, will it?
No.
Well, what message does that send to the public and to other members, hardworking members of the royal family, if the king allows Prince Harry back into the fold without any
the human side of all of this?
Well,
everyone. I know that it's almost turning into the, Peyton Place as a soap opera, but there is always the human element, and humans do things, instinctively sometimes, and you don't know quite what the king is necessarily feeling. Yes.
So what's interesting there is, I guess you've got Robert Jobson, who has always been very close to Charles and tends to take a more positive point of view on Charles, trying to make the point, well, look, this isn't a soap opera, and of course he's coming to the end of his life and there might be reasoning for it. But I think most shocking is Tom Bower's reporting there, which is that Harry doesn't feel any guilt, any remorse. And I think if you don't have any guilt or any remorse, it's very difficult to think of any type of path back.
Yeah, and he's choosing to come back, and he wants to make amends at a time when he has left no stone unturned. He has financially exploited every single avenue he possibly could. And now he wants to come back. The only thing he says, he wanted a life of service. The only thing that's been serviced is their bank accounts and egos. It's all very well him saying he wants, to come back into the fold, or showing signs that, he wants to come back. But the damage has been done. I see no possible way for him to join back in the fold whatsoever.
The other thing I want to discuss with you, Lauren, is how the royal family can get over some of the most harmful allegations from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle over the years. And of course, nothing has been more harmful than the false racism allegations. And so before we get into it, this is Jobson and Bower's take.
As a person, you listen to your wife, you listen to your other son, but also as the king, you'll make your own decision.
Well, I think the other point, which is very important in all this, is the accusation by Meghan, supported by Harry, that the royal family is racist. And her account of the conversations, which was a lie by her, to Harry when he first met Meghan, and that fabrication, the damage that did around the world, especially in Africa and Asia, about the royal family's image, has been and remains colossal.
Yes.
And this is the guy, Tom, that then tried to backtrack on it after to say that actually it's all to do with
racial consciousness, subconscious racism,
and all that, unconscious bias. And this is the guy that used a word that was used by the National Front to address another army cadet. This is the guy when he was a little boy that mocked an Indian bus conductor in a terrible way, and then wrote about it. Then wrote a letter to the bodyguard, repeating it after he was slapped by his mother for doing that racist comment. And this is the guy that wore a Nazi armband. And so to be lectured by someone like that, I find really abhorrent.
Well, I go further than that. I mean, all those things can be excused as youth and all the rest of it. But the support of Meghan in her full story about the conversation, which was banter, and I know that from first hand, and was really inconsequential, to support that was his act of folly, because he was already a grown man at that stage. He knew the consequence of it.
He was pretty grown when he said the comment. He was in his 20s when he said about a Pakistani fellow officer. But I do think you're right on that. I think that that racism, and it still sticks.
Oh, huge.
So look, lots to pick up on there, Lauren. I mean, I definitely like Robert Jobson's PR approach, and I actually wish the royal family had done it more aggressively. I'm not sure about your point of view, but it's like, why on earth are we taking lectures about racism from an actual racist, a proven racist, someone who has used the P word, someone who is dressed up as a Nazi? There's a whole load of actual proof about that. But do you agree with Tom Bower that the damage that Harry and Meghan has done continues to ricochet all across the globe? And from your point of view, as someone who has been involved in these sorts of damage control operations and very much changed the narrative, what should the royal family be doing now to move away from the damage that Harry and Meghan caused?
The damage that's been done is horrific, and the best thing they can do is not engage with Harry and Meghan, because they can't be trusted. And I think when Harry and Meghan did that interview with Oprah, I know the first section that Meghan did on her own, and then the second was with Harry, there is no way they didn't know every single question that was going to be asked. They would have planned, in my opinion, the answers out beforehand. Everything they do is so highly
so it was almost
curated.
Scripted with Oprah.
Everything with them feels so disingenuous to me. And you never do an interview. I would never put someone forward for an interview without knowing the questions, going through things with a fine-tooth comb. Whoever is representing Harry and Meghan, I very much doubt they would have put them forwards to Oprah without going through everything with a fine-tooth comb.
And Oprah's a friend as well. That's the point. She's not a journalist. She's not operating as a journalist in this interview.
Yeah.
She is a friend of the couple.
A friend and neighbour. She is. And, they know what they're saying. They know what they're doing. At that level, everything that you do is scrutinized and is amplified and is under the spotlight. They know that. This doesn't come as a shock to them. This isn't someone that's gone on Love Island and suddenly has woken up famous one day. Harry has been born into this, and Meghan has now been in it for many years. They know exactly what happens when they say something. And they also knew the damage it would cause, because they knew that the royals would not be able to come back and say anything in the same way that Harry and Meghan were allowed to voice what they believed was their truth.
I also want to talk to you about why this Prince Harry letter has been leaked this week. So do you remember he did this stunt with a tattoo parlor, and it was a New York tattoo owner called Chris Barron-Smith, and then he filmed this stunt inside his tattoo parlor with an artist called Jelly Roll for a video which showed him seemingly receiving a tattoo that we believed to be false, which then was played at the Invictus Games. But what's interesting, Lauren, is the timing of when it's been leaked, this letter, because of course this all took place in 2024, right? And then when Harry is in trouble and all of a sudden everyone's turning on him because he's leaked the details of the secret peace summit meeting. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the thank you letter that he wrote to the East Side tattoo owner months and months and months ago miraculously finds its way into the public domain. This is what the letter said, by the way. 17th of October 2024, by the way. So what's that? 8 months or more since he wrote that letter to when it finds its way into the public domain. Harry writes, "Dear Josh, thank you so much for your generosity in offering us your space at East Side Inc. for filming. It was incredibly kind and I really enjoyed meeting you and learning more about the history of your shop. I also appreciated your artful handling of press questions regarding my visit. It means a lot. And I was rather impressed by your skillful dodging. Well done. They'll be in for a shock when they see the final cut. Grateful for your partnership and support in service of the Invictus community. If you'd like to come to Vancouver in February, we'd love to have you. All the best. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex." So quite a lot of interesting things from that letter for me, Lauren, before we get to the timing of it. Firstly, he's always thinking about the media, isn't he? He lives his life thinking about the media and sort of playing the media. And we've got one over the media and wasn't that great? He's quite obsessed by it rather than just thinking, I'm going to go and I'm going to film a great stunt and it will be a brilliant video. It's all about, oh yeah, this is great. We've got one over the media. I think that's quite unhealthy, to be totally honest. Secondly, he still views himself very much as a royal, signing off the letter, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. But is this a stunt? The fact that this letter, sort of like a distraction stunt, the fact that 8 months on, all of a sudden when Harry's looking for some positive PR, looking to sort of overshadow the fact that the meeting has been leaked, this letter finds its way into the public domain. Because given this tattoo parlor owner had been so well behaved up until this point, doesn't feel to me like all of a sudden he would leak the letter without Harry's permission. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it happened in October. We're in July. Why would it take so long to leak? And also what makes me laugh is Harry and Meghan they have 8 communication specialists that are working across 5 time zones. That's just in America. Plus they've got people in the UK. Imagine employing and paying that many people for such bad advice. And the most they can come up with is leaking a letter from 8 months ago.
Yeah, it's hardly a very good...
it's not front page news.
No, exactly. And they did have a lot to distract from, though, because the Royal News Network has been crunching the numbers on the Netflix disaster, because it is a disaster now. There's no way you can call this deal anything other than a disaster, at least in terms of the success of the deal. It might be very good for Meghan in terms of her reputation and her finances, but in terms of the success of the deal, it's quite an extraordinary flop. So this is what the Royal News Network had to say about these new numbers, saying there's a lot of cope going on today for the Meghan Markle stans, but the official Netflix report is here in a black and white Excel spreadsheet with Love Meghan flopped. It was beaten by multiple seasons of her former series Suits, and it barely managed to double its initial audience after its first week. No one would call 3 months of viewership, landing at just 5.6 million for a new show on an international platform, a win. It's a flop. Its retention and return viewership was bad. It just did not do well. And Netflix will not renew a deal worth $100 million if the best the couple can do after 5 years is ranking at number 383. Harry and Meghan had one hit and a string of flops. With Love, Meghan was noticeably absent from Netflix summary of achievements, which means that the streaming giant also did not consider it a success or notable in any way to the first half of the year. If they did, it would have been included. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Harry and Meghan generate a lot of noise, but that noise doesn't tend to convert well. We have even more evidence that the couple's consumer base is small, and half of that is probably hate watching or watching to review. Wow. Lauren, these numbers are hard to argue with, aren't they?
Yeah, and this is the worst thing as well. For a PR, you you can't argue with stats. So this is a massive problem they're facing, because on one hand, you've got the MSM telling people, we want them back in the fold. We don't. We don't even want to watch their Netflix show. Peppa Pig is a better brand than what Meghan and Harry have built. It's in the top 10 Netflix chart. People don't care about Meghan and Harry, and now their PRs have a real job on their hands, because you can't fake the stats, you can't buy viewers on Netflix, and the stats speak very clearly for themselves.
Absolutely fascinating stuff, and I really do recommend that people follow Lauren on Instagram. So it is Lauren Kimberly Lunn Farrow, and you will find her brilliant dismantling of not just what's been going on with this royal news over the past week, but the rest of the mainstream media too. I absolutely love what you're doing, Lauren, and thank you so much for being on Outspoken today. I hope you come back very soon.
Thank you.
At this point, the story becomes bigger than Harry and Meghan themselves. The real issue is credibility. When private family disputes repeatedly become public controversies, rebuilding trust becomes incredibly difficult. Not because reconciliation is impossible, but because trust depends on believing that sensitive conversations will remain protected. The leaked letter also raises an important lesson about media strategy. Timing matters. An old piece of material can suddenly become news when released at a moment of heightened scrutiny, whether that timing was deliberate or simply coincidental. And then there is the commercial question. Attention can create headlines, but sustainable success requires audiences who return, products that scale, and businesses that function beyond celebrity curiosity. So perhaps the biggest challenge facing Harry and Meghan isn't getting another headline. It's proving that they can build something that stands on its own. And for Harry especially, the ultimate test may be whether he can create a future defined by his own achievements, not his family, not Diana, and not another royal controversy. Because when the headlines finally fade, what will actually be left?